Greetings, I am Tantus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. Hopefully I can get this one up on Wednesday. If not, it's a little late, but today we're going to continue talking about 5th edition. I'm going to talk about the races of 5th edition again. I'm going to talk about the unusual races. Now the unusual races are rarer, they're not seen as much. You might want to talk to your GM about playing them. Maybe ask him ahead of time if it's okay to play one of these unusual races, just before you even think about it. And maybe he'll say, oh, it's okay, or he wants some discretion, so let him know what race you want to play. Whatever. But these races, to exist in the world, they're just rarer. So let's start talking about them. There's 5 of them. We're going to start with the Dragonborn. Okay, Dragonborn, they're technically related to dragons. They're like a humanoid dragon person. They're chivalrous, they live in clans. They get +2 strength and +1 charisma. They're an adult at 15, they're medium, have a speed of 30. They have a dragon affinity, which means they are related to one color of dragon. There are 10 dragon that you can sort of choose from. The 5 chromatic, 5 metallic. Chromatic dragons are based on colors, and they're traditionally evil. As a Dragonborn, you don't need to be any alignment. It doesn't really matter. It's just that your coloration is of an evil dragon. The metallic dragons are traditionally the good ones. Again, there's 5 of them. There's sort of some mixing about how they match up. But traditionally, what your affinity gives you is a resistance to an element, a breath weapon, which does an amount of damage, which levels with you, and your targets get reflex saves to avoid damage. They would take half damage if they make it. But anyway, so there's your breath weapon. And it depends on the shape of your breath weapon. If it's a line or a code. Okay, so I've gone over a lot here right away, but let's talk about each of them. So let's talk about the colors. The colors are red, green, blue, white, and black. Each of them has their own element they're related to. Again, sort of what kind of damage they'd resist. The same damage as what your breath weapon does. The metallics ones are bronze, brass, copper, gold, and silver. I'm not going to go over each of them, but there's an entire chart which tells you what it is, because you get a draconic resistance. Resistance to an element related to your color or metal. That's the first thing. Then, as I talked about, you have the breath weapon, which you can do basically once per day. In 5th edition, you can have long and short rests. Short rests recover certain things, long rests recover certain things. This one, you can do either type of rest to recover your breath weapon. So I could do a short rest and I have it back, which is something like an hour, or a long rest, which is more like 8 hours. I'll talk about rests later on, but you just have to know you could probably use your breath weapon more than once a day. You just have to wait a good period of time and sort of recover it in between. As I said, it does an amount of damage. As you level up, it gets more damage, and also it's got like a difficulty, a DC, that levels with you a little bit. And, you know, your opponents make a dexterity save to avoid the damage partially. They're going to take half damage if they make it. That's Dragonborn. Okay, what's up next? Gnomes. Gnomes are sort of like fey-blooded, in-between halflings and dwarfs would be almost. Living underground, they're very nature-based. They get +2 intelligence. They're small. They're an adult at 40. They have dark vision. They move at 25. They actually have advantage on intelligence, wisdoms, and charisma saves against magic. And there are 2 sub-races defined, and 1 mentioned sub-race. They'll probably give you the statistics of the mentioned sub-race, the deep gnomes, Svirfneblin, later on. It's a funny name, Svirfneblin, SV. But they're a race you could possibly play in the future. They'll talk about them. But what about the 2 sub-races they talk about here? The forest gnome. They get +1 dexterity. Now they get the minor illusion cantrip. So if you want to look that up, look up the spell minor illusion. It's a cantrip. You get it. They also get the ability to speak with small animals. So if there's like a squirrel or a small bird, they could speak with it. And there's also rock gnomes. They get +1 constitution. And they get artificer, which is an ability which means they can sort of know what's going on with artifacts and pieces of technology and magic items. And they have tinkerer, which means they can make little items that can give them little bonuses here or there. They can construct them for a little bit of money. You know, they can put these things that they could be like, oh, one time use this thing. And they could always replace it with something else later. They could just keep building, like, small things. But, so you can either have, like, you know, illusionist gnomes or, you know, tinkerer gnomes. It's sort of the idea, you know. So, like, the trickster or the tinkerer. And what's the next race? Half-elf. They're of these two worlds, in between humans and elves. They often either, if they related to their parents, they will often form diplomats between the societies, or oftentimes they feel they're not in either of them and just wander away. So they get +2 charisma and +1 to 2 stats of their choice. So they'll have a +4 total, 2 to charisma, and I might want 1 to strength, 1 to constitution, or whatever combination I want. They're an adult at 20. They're of course medium, have a speed of 30, have advantage against charm abilities, and magic, which will put you to sleep, doesn't affect them, very similar to their elf parents. They also get proficiency in 2 skills of your choice. So that's a big bonus for being a half-elf, is I get proficiency in 2 skills, just extra proficiency. It's really cool. Half-elves also have dark vision, of course. Now let's move on to the next race, half-orcs. They are again sort of this duplicity, they're of 2 worlds. Orcs are often pretty terrible, pretty shunned, so they kind of have that savage ancestry. They have to live up to the fact that, they are still children of a dark god, Grunch, because orcs are supposedly children of Grunch. Alright, so let's talk about what they get. They, of course, are medium. They have a speed of 30. They get +2 strength and +1 con. They're an adult at 14. They have proficiency in the intimidate skill, so they're intimidating. They also have a ferocity, which means once per long rest, if I'm hitting an orc with an attack and it would drop it to 0 and not kill it outright, that's the rules, it's not killing it outright, just dropping it to 0, not killing it outright, then it can instead be at 1 hit point. That means once per long rest, I can escape dropping in combat, if an attack wouldn't kill me outright. They also get the ability that when they critical with a melee weapon, they can roll the dice of the melee weapon an extra time, which I'll talk about how criticals work in the future. It's just they do more damage when they critical. Okay, so the last race I'm going to talk about is tieflings. Now, tieflings are people that have fiendish blood in them. They have sort of like devil blood deep in their bodies that's sort of been there, and it expresses them. They have like this dark, tainted blood, which means some of them sort of lean towards evil, but there are plenty of them that don't want to live up to that sort of ancestry and go, toward the path of good. So you could really be any alignment with being a tiefling. It's just you have to think about that duality, that you have this sort of blood which tells you to do dark things, but you might want to live up and be a better person. So what do tieflings get? They get +1 intelligence and +2 charisma. They're an adult at the same age a human would be. They're of course medium, have a speed of 30. They have dark vision. Their fiendish blood gives them resistance to fire, and they get a number of spells as they level up. But at first level, you get the Thaumaturgy cantrip. So they also get a cantrip at first level. But you get more of them as you level up for being a tiefling. Alright, so that's it for today. I've talked about the rest of the races in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. So if you have any questions, anything you want to talk about to do with this, please leave a comment. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. And always, please come on, subscribe. We're always looking for more members. We'd love for you to join and become a citizen of the Dracovin Empire. But until next time, I bid you farewell.